Now, for more perspective on the unfolding political drama in South Africa, I'm joined by Paul Nantuly. He's a researcher for the National Defense University's Africa Center for Strategic Studies. Paul, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting developments in South Africa.
Indeed.
But now, first, you saw Zuma trying to make a case for himself. But the party is determined to have him out through a vote of no confidence. For me, the question is, what if in the vote of no confidence, they don't get enough votes to get him out? What next?
Well, it's quite unlikely. It's quite unlikely that a vote of no confidence will fail, simply because there's a groundswell, not just from within the opposition, but also in the ANC itself and the broader South African public, that Zuma must depart. But if for any reason he stays on, or rather he refuses to step down, a constitutional crisis could emerge, because that is pretty much the mechanism that the ANC, as the ruling party, has left to implement its decision to recall the state president. So
from what you know, first, once that happens and there's this constitutional situation, who then now has the power to act on Zuma? Or will the ANC be left in a position where they have no choice but to just let him hang on?
Well, that's a little difficult, but there have been some indications that once this route goes, Zuma will not have any other options left. President Zuma will not have other options, and there'll be parliamentary processes that will have to be followed,
like impeachment.
Yes. So, for instance, they still have the option of impeachment. They've got to draw up articles of impeachment. I'll just take you back to the Constitutional Court decision last December that ruled that Parliament, there was a dereliction of duty on the part of Parliament for having failed to hold him responsible for the luxury upgrades, the use of public funds for luxury upgrades in his house, at his private residence. So Parliament has been doing precisely that.
And what's the difference actually here between the vote of no confidence and impeachment?
Yes, the difference with the vote of no confidence and an impeachment is that a vote of no confidence is a more straightforward option. In this case, the motion has been introduced by the Economic Freedom Fighters, an opposition party, and the ANC said this morning that they will work with the EFF in order to effect this process. So that is pretty straightforward. The impeachment is a little bit more complicated because, as I said before, they've got to draw up articles of impeachment and they have to launch a parliamentary investigation that has to satisfy the National Assembly that wrongdoing was done, that there was misconduct. And it could be on a number of things. It could be with respect to the Nkandla issue, his private residence. It could be respect to the allegations of state capture with this commission of inquiry that is ongoing. It could be a whole range of things. So that would be a more complicated process, and it would take a bit more time to implement.
Would it be accurate to say this is also the first time that the opposition is actually working with the ANC to try and remove the ANC president?
Yes, and I've been in touch with people on the ground in South Africa close to the process, and the thinking is that for the ANC this will be a disaster, in the sense that it creates an impression that the ANC has failed to rein in its own leader. But I'm looking at it differently. I think it's an opportunity for the ANC to demonstrate that it is able to reach across the aisle and work with opposition parties in order to effect what would be a popular outcome, i.e. the stepping aside of Jacob Zuma. Secondly, all these battles are being conducted through constitutional and non-violent processes. I mean, if I take you back to what happened in Zimbabwe, the military was involved and there were issues of a coup and so on and so forth. In South Africa, there is a culture that has been developing since 1994, of using democratic and constitutional methods. So it could actually be a blessing in disguise for the ANC to be seen by the public as having been willing to work with the opposition in order to effect this decision.
And I could say actually should be a great lesson for the rest of the continent of Africa.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes,
absolutely.
And we'll explore this on, lessons that can be learned from South Africa.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Paul Nantuly is a researcher for the National Defense University's Africa Center for Strategic Studies.